You ever see the word of the day calendars? Every day you pick a word and it's like, oh, here's a new word, and you try to integrate it into your daily conversation. Do you remember those?
Yeah, I think I'm aware that those existed. Yeah,
Yeah.
or
Well,
exist.
I guess word on the street is that Kamala Harris, uh, yep, there you go. Kamala Harris's word of the day the other day was holistic and variations of the word holistic. Let's take a look.
And assistance to state and local governments around transit dollars, and looking holistically at the connection between that and housing, and looking holistically at the incentives we in the federal government can create for local and state governments to actually engage in planning in a holistic manner that includes prioritizing affordable housing.
As somebody who was a teacher for 21 years, she is every student that I ever had who tried to bull their way through a presentation. She sounds like a Miss America pageant candidate who is trying to give some sort of highly rehearsed answer where you remember the one girl a few years ago
Yes,
who was just
South
like
Carolina.
and such
Yeah.
and such. Yeah.
Yes.
Everything she says sounds like that. She's faking it, man. That's the thing. She's faking it. And I can smell the faking it on her from like 10,000 miles away because I saw it so many times as a college professor, except for rather than giving a presentation in a 100 level class, she's giving a series of presentations, as few as she can get away with giving because she dreads presentation day, right? That's why she avoids these interviews. But every time that she has a presentation to make publicly, she is faking it, faking it, faking it. And the only thing that's at stake is who's going to be the leader of the free world. What a fucking time to be alive, Ronnie. What a fucking time to be alive. Caitlin Clark's celebrated rookie season has come to its conclusion with a playoff defeat last night. The Connecticut Sun beating the Indiana Fever 87-81 last night. Caitlin Clark did her best. She played the entire game, 25 points, 9 assists, 6 rebounds. She did her part, but the Indiana Fever just not quite up to the task yet in her rookie season. It took Jordan a while, as you may remember. When Michael Jordan came into the league, the Bulls weren't great for the first several years. She certainly has elevated the Indiana Fever to a different level than they've been on for a number of years and turned that franchise around. We all look forward to seeing what she's going to do over the course of the next decade. But what a rookie season. Memorable, to say the least, for some of the best of reasons and also for some reasons that maybe weren't the best reasons. It was controversial right up until the end. We knew from the time that she was drafted, before she had even played a game, you had Diana Taurasi saying that reality was coming and she was going to get a real check. And the reality check did come for maybe about the first 8 or 10 games of the season. And then after that, the reality checking was being done by Caitlin for about the last 3/4 of the season, I would say. Putting up very numbers. Cheryl Swoops wasn't impressed. She didn't think that the numbers were dominant, even though the numbers were better statistically than any season that Cheryl Swoops had during her 3-time MVP career. Gino Auriemma, we've talked about on this program, did not forecast great things for her. Said that the expectations weren't fair, that she wouldn't be able to live up to it. She made the greatest coach, at least in terms of championships, in the history of women's basketball, look foolish with the way that she played. She had her haters. There's no question about it. Angel Reese was cast as the villain for most of the season, and Angel Reese seemed to embrace that. She really did. And I have said, villains are good for sports. You need the villain. Rocky needed Drago. When the New York Yankees are dominant, it's good for baseball. And so Angel Reese, she became the bad guy. And there were things that happened on the court. Kennedy Carter giving her a cheap shot, knocking her down. Some hard fouls during the season, right up until the end of the year. Dejanay Carrington in the playoffs, getting that acrylic fingernail to Caitlin's eye, and people crying foul. And this is the ugly part of what we've seen. A lot of the players in the league have said, hey, there's been a lot of racism and vitriol directed at us online. There's been a lot of hatred, a lot of pushback from Caitlin Clark fans in response to what has been perceived, and I think perceived reasonably in many cases, Caitlin Clark not receiving the warm reception into the league that you would think a great player who is bringing more attention to the game than we've ever seen before should have received. There wasn't really a welcome wagon for Caitlin Clark. There was a lot of shade thrown at her. Downplaying her accomplishments in college. Downplaying her potential in the pro game. We've all heard people bring and interject race into it, interject sexual orientation into it. And that subtext has been there throughout the entire season, and it's been amplified throughout the season with each incident that has occurred and the perceptions that people put onto it. Look, things that happen in life are largely sometimes subject to perception and interpretation. It's like you read a poem or your favorite song's lyrics. What you get from those lyrics might be very different than what somebody else gets from those very same lyrics. And what the author of the lyrics may have intended might be different than what either you or someone else happens to think about it. Because a lot of great art, the magic is in the interpretation. We do a lot of interpretation in society, reading, well, what do people really mean? Particularly when we're looking at public figures, right? Somebody says something and we say, well, here's what that really meant. And sometimes people say that with all the self-assurance in the world, as though they were privy to the inner workings of the other person's brain. But we're not, are we? And so we have seen the worst sorts of allegations cast back and forth throughout the season. These women in the league, they hate Caitlin Clark. The narrative goes because she's white in a league that's predominantly black, that she is straight in a league where a pretty fair portion of the players are not. And that some people speculate, well, that's a part of the reason that she's being treated this way. And then I've seen the blowback come in the opposite direction. Dejanay Carrington, I'm one of the few people that I've seen on social media lately defending her because I'm not willing to say that that was an intentional act. And I'm certainly not willing to say that it was the product of racism. I've heard people openly call Dejanay Carrington a racist for a foul that she committed that should have gotten a whistle, that should have been a foul. It was not a foul on the court. It was clearly a foul if you see the play. The refs didn't blow the whistle. But was that a racist act, a racist attack, as I've heard it characterized? I'm sorry. I think that is taking us in a direction that is very, very unhealthy for the WNBA and very, very unhealthy for us as sports fans to start casting about aspersions on that level back and forth with very, very little credibility, very little basis to make such a claim. She got a fingernail in the eye, and that's where we're at by the end of the season. That's the bad part about this. Overall, I think Caitlin Clark's rookie year has been a rousing success for the WNBA. I cared more about this season of the WNBA than I cared about the past 25 plus, ever how many there have been, close to 30 seasons previously, combined. And I think a lot of people are in that category. I bet you there were a lot of people who were surprised to say, much as I was, I actually have some interest in the WNBA. So that's a huge win for the WNBA. And Caitlin Clark's game has certainly translated to the pro game. She's going to be even better next year. As my man Ronnie T-Shirts has said, she came straight out of a college season into the WNBA season. No break, no off season, no chance to recuperate, no chance to get additional conditioning and come into the season fully rested and ready to go. She's going to do that next year, and she knows what to expect. And she's going to go into this offseason, and she's going to work on the areas of her game that she thinks she needs to improve to take it to the next level. I expect a better season from Caitlin Clark next year, and she very well could be the MVP of the WNBA next year. Now, what I hope that we see off the court is, I would love to say an end. I'm not realistic. I'm realistic. I don't think there's going to be an end to the nastiness that we've seen happening off the court on social media. Things being directed at players. It's a game at the end of the day. It's a game. And so let's get the focus on the game. I like villains on the court. But I don't like people to be villainized as human beings off the court. And I hope that as we get into year 2 next season of the Caitlin Clark era, because it is her era in the WNBA, that maybe we can find some peace and understanding and not continue to be polarized, because we're polarized in our politics in this country. We don't need to be polarized that way in sports, because one thing sports has historically done in this society is unite us. And it can still be a uniting force in the 21st century. And let's hope that it will be next year in the WNBA. I want to focus more next year on what Caitlin does on the court, and I hope that there's less focus on the off-the-court bullshit. And with that said, I bring in the international streaming star from Nashville, Tennessee, Ronnie T-Shirts, joins the program. Ronnie, I referenced you just a couple of minutes ago, what you had said not long ago on this show. I think you're 100% right. As this Caitlin Clark rookie season has come to an end, and you've been on the journey with me as somebody who's really paying attention to the WNBA for the first time, what are your reflections as we put a bow on this? Because the truth is, the season's not over yet, but for a lot of us who are primarily interested in the Caitlin Clark story, a lot of people are going to be tuning out at this point. So Caitlin's portion is done. What do you make of it looking back?
Well, speaking of international, what I would like to see, just because I think it would be hilarious, I'd love to see Caitlin just give him a big flip off and go play internationally and see what happens to your worthless, meaningless, nobody watches league before Caitlin Clark got there. Because that's exactly what would happen, Ricky. Because I'm not even consuming. Yes, I'm not even consuming.
Oh, wow. That's cold. That is cold. I
mean,
didn't know
talk about
producer Tim was going to hit us with that. That is, yeah, we'll see you. See you next summer.
I mean, dude, I'm not even where you're at. I occasionally will get this twinge in my brain, and I'll be like, "Oh, I wonder how many points Caitlin Clark scored tonight." And I'll pull up and I'll look at a box score. But I'm not, I might have watched less than 10 minutes this year. I'm mildly interested in it because you are, and we talk about it on the show. But I think that if I wasn't doing the show with you, I would literally not pay attention to it. So I just think it would be so funny if she was just like, you know what, I'm so tired of you bitches, and just went and played in Spain or Italy or something like that, because then everybody would truly see that she's not the bad guy and she's not the villain. She's she's just there to play basketball, and she's bringing a lot of eyes that would never ever watch those games. So I don't know, Ricky. I just everybody in the WNBA that's against Caitlin Clark, I just find it hilariously short-sighted on their part. Imagine if the players in the NFL treated Patrick Mahomes, who's, I would say he's probably the most popular player in the NFL right now, wouldn't you? Like, just kind of across the country, look at kids and adults alike, and like he's in the most commercials other than Kelsey, but Kelsey's there because of Taylor Swift. Imagine if the NFL treated Patrick like the WNBA treats Caitlin. Like, could you absolutely imagine that? We would be losing our collective minds.
Yeah, it's terrible from a business standpoint. I do think that they kind of got away with it this year. But I think that going forward, it gets tiresome after a while, right? This idea of it gets old. It gets old. The soap opera was interesting this year, and I think that as toxic as aspects of it were, overall, it was probably good for the game because, as you like to say, there's no such thing as bad publicity. True. So we saw a lot of publicity, but if we're back in year 2 and it's still people going back and forth in this way, like we're on a hamster wheel of some sort of culture war that is centered around these basketball players, I think that it is going to grate on people. And eventually, it's not going to benefit the game. I think the novelty of all of this allowed the WNBA to use some toxic stuff in a way that probably was a net positive. I'm not sure that's going to be the case going forward. We need to grow up and focus on basketball, and fans need to kind of get over it somewhat too, because every player in the WNBA isn't out to get Caitlin Clark. This has been portrayed as though it's the entire league against her. I don't think every player in the WNBA harbored a grudge against Caitlin Clark. I'm sure that there are a lot of WNBA players who recognize the value that she brings to the game and who are supportive of her, but we've seen sort of this entire league painted with a broad brush to say like, hey, they're all jealous of her. They're all haters. Some of them were jealous of her and haters. There's no question about that. I thought Diana Taurasi was being incredibly a hater before she even had a chance to get into the league. But yeah, Gino Auriemma was being a hater very early when she'd only played a handful of games at the beginning of the season. And they got off to a 1-8 start, right? They ended 20-20 in the regular season, but it was a rough start until, as I said during my opening, she began to turn the tide. So there's no question that there was a lot of nastiness that was directed at Caitlin, but I don't think that most of it was directed at her because of a lot of these underlying issues that we've become sidetracked with.
I'm just glad we don't have to talk about it anymore. We can focus all of our energy.
You're not.
We can focus all our energy.
You're not
on
done
football.
with her yet, pal.
All of our energy.
You're not done with her yet.
Now.
You're not done with her yet, pal. She's the Rookie of the Year award is going to be announced in a couple of weeks. She's going to pop up in the news. Some player's gonna offer some comment in an interview. We're not done with her completely, but yeah, the season has wound down. One thing I will say is one little comment here: the playoffs here, they got to do something about this fucked up playoff format. The first round of the WNBA playoffs is a best of 3, but you only get a home game. If you're the lower seed, you only get a home game if you make it to game 3. I think it's completely fucked up that Caitlin Clark made the playoffs and the Indiana Fever was not permitted a home game. That's bullshit. How does it make any sense to you that the favored team gets 2 back-to-back games at home, and then if you happen to win one, then it swings to the advantage of the lower seed? Why aren't they doing 1, 1, and 1? Are they that fucking cheap?
Well, I was just going to say,
is that the reason?
It makes absolute perfect sense to me. I mean, the league hemorrhages money every year, and so the odds are the better team is going to win 2 games, and then they don't have to do a second whole travel situation with planes and hotels and all of that stuff. It's 100% a money issue. And they're going to have to fix that. They weren't counting on Caitlin Clark when they came up with that penny pinching strategy, if that's what it is. And I don't doubt it. It probably is a money issue. But man, the money issue now is they lost all the gate receipts and all of the money that they could have made in Indianapolis, filling up the Pacers arena, packing that place. And hell, Lucas Field.
It's just a pity. Yeah, seriously. You're not even kidding, bro.
No, I'm not.
Pack that place. There's no telling. They could have probably drawn 30 or 40,000 for a playoff game there. So I think that they won't repeat that, but we'll see. If we're sitting here next season and it's the same thing, then they really are beyond help, because Stevie Wonder sees that was a mistake.
I will be.
Let's go to the poll of the day, Ronnie. You will be the most upset probably of anybody. Let's go to the poll of the day over at Super 70 Sports on X, where I have put together 4 things that are good, which is what I try to do in search of the elusive quadruple 25, which has thus far eluded me. It's my Moby Dick. It's my great white whale. Ron, break it down for me. Tell me what you see here. I've got 4 tasty options.
Yeah, you're not getting 25 across the boards today. I mean, you just assume that everybody else is a figurine guy like you, and I don't think that that's true. James Taylor, absolutely.
Walter's very offended. Walter, cover your ears, Walter.
James Taylor has nowhere close to the mass appeal that you probably think that he does. A good green light stretch and curly fries. Those are the 2 that I chose between, and I went with, I feel like I could live my life without curly fries. There's other delicious fried potato options, and just killing the green lights, that's the best. So I went with a good green light streak.
When I say a good green light streak, how many do you have to hit in a row before you consider it to be kind of magical? Or maybe magical is not the right word, but how many
I feel you.
Before it's like a thing? You know what I mean? When you start to feel that momentum building.
Yeah, I'm picking up what you're laying down. I guess a lot of it has to do on the distance between the lights. So we do have to factor that into it, right? But I would say 4, I'm starting to notice it. 5, I'm feeling good. You hit 6, man, you're like, this is on. This is on. And it does feel good because I do think, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody tell us if I think that they're basically timed based on going the speed limit, the distance between. And so if it's green and you're going the speed limit, the distance to the next one, it'll stay green and it'll just keep happening. That's my understanding.
You're just talking out your ass right now completely, aren't you?
No,
like you have no idea whether that's right or not. And you're just,
no, I really
you're
think
just
that's
mansplaining. You're just mansplaining red lights to America right now with like absolutely zero credibility.
Well,
I heard a guy once say that he hit, and I have no reason to doubt him because what kind of fucked up person would go online and tell this story for shits and giggles? But I saw a guy once say that he hit 23 green lights in a row driving home from work one night.
Who goes through 23 who has a route that goes through 23 lights? That's insane, Ricky.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the guy was from Atlanta, but he said 23 in a row, and he's like, I still think about it like multiple times a year. Like I reflect on like how incredible. I mean, I guess, you know, it's within the realm of mathematical probability, I guess. But, you know.
Have you ever reflected?
Yeah.
Have you ever reflected on just that perfect curly fry? Just the right heat, the right temperature, the right crispiness, the right seasoning.
Well, curly fries are not widely available enough. Tim has given us the Oscar walk-off music. He's just going to go ahead and vote here.
He's done with our conversation.
He's done with our conversation. That was producer Tim's way of saying, like, let's go here. Yeah, Tim is telling me that the voting is weird. I don't know the results yet, but I'm being told that it's weird today. So, okay, well, let's get a look at it then. Can we get it up on the screen?
Yeah, it feels like I saw it before.
It's not firing. All right, well, we're having technical difficulties, Ron, but I'm being told that a good green light streak and curly fries are tied 35-35.
Yes.
So
I'm right.
Okay, and James Taylor 18, bobbleheads 10 is what I'm being told. So the poll has failed, but in its failure, we have a nice horse race between green light streaks and curly fries. So at least there's a silver lining today.
Do you have a James
curly
Taylor?
Fries, I was going to say.
Do you have a James Taylor bobblehead?
They're not. Well, I know someone who might. If anybody would, I have a friend who would be that person. Here we go. Look at this. This could be like a preview of Harris Trump, Ronnie. 35.8% to 35.2%. Curly fries just in a tenuous lead over a good green light streak. Curly fries are, like the only place I ever get them are Arby's. And Arby's, the last racks in the state of Illinois has curly fries as well.
Arby's, or you can get them at the grocery store in the plastic bag, and then you put them in the air fryer, and they're not nearly as good as they are at Arby's. But you can at least get them at home if you really need them.
That makes me think, dude. I was thinking about this the other night. A good topic for next week, and this could be, it might even be too powerful, but air fryers need to be in a poll. Air fryers are so fucking amazing. I had a friend who posted, Pete. You don't watch this show, Pete, you motherfucker, so I'll just call you a name. You'll hear about it probably through our mutual friend, Matt. But anyway, my friend Pete posted on Facebook one time, like, I don't get air fryers. What's the big deal? And I just responded, delete this.
Mm-hmm.
Because you obviously know not whereof you speak, my friend, because air fryers are one of the finest inventions of modern history, I would argue, Ronnie.
I was not an early adapter to air fryers, and I questioned myself every day what the fuck was wrong with me. Why did I resist it? It was one of our worst decisions as a household is resisting the air fryer.
You'll never get that time back.
Never.
Just all of the air, and that was back when you didn't give a fuck. You could have just been pigging out.
Yeah.
That was before. Yep. That was before. You just completely transformed yourself like Barry Bonds in the late 90s. You could have just had so much stuff that was bad for you, and I'm sorry that happened to you, Ron.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, bobbleheads. Okay, people aren't into bobbleheads. I get it. I meant like free. Maybe I should have said giveaways. Aren't we all fired up when you go to the ballpark and you get something free? Even if you don't give a fuck about the player, like you go to Wrigley Field and you're just like, oh, hey, cool, Kyle Hendricks or whatever, and then it just goes in a closet somewhere. But it feels satisfying to get a free gift when you go to a ball game, Ron.
I don't know. You're just a figurine guy and you're trying to get everybody else to be a figurine guy too. And it is just not going to happen.
All right. Well, now you're going to get Walters back for having said that. You're offended. This man is a regular part of our program and you would offend him like that. Ron, do you like Coca-Cola? Do you agree with me? As I always say, Coca-Cola, so much better than Pepsi.
Nope, I'm Pepsi.
There's no question about it. Pepsi, as I've said before, it's just like you poured sugar in toilet water and you drink. Okay, well, Coca-Cola apparently has some online thing where for $7.95 you can go online and design your own Coke can. Okay, this is a thing apparently. So the controversy here, or at least a mini controversy, and I think this is in the category of those controversies that are controversial for about 7 minutes until we move on to something else tomorrow. But somebody went on there and they discovered that you couldn't put Jesus on the can. Somebody tried to put Jesus loves you on the can and it was not allowed. And then somebody went in there and put Allah loves you, and Coca-Cola allowed that. Somebody had put Harris Walls 2024 on there. Somebody else went in and tried to put Trump 2024 on there, and it didn't allow that. So the outrage, Christian outrage, is how it's being characterized, Ron. People upset that they can't put Jesus loves you on their Coke can. How concerned should we be about this? Coca-Cola has their online disclaimer, and this has apparently been corrected now. So we're going to say that. They say the tool does not approve names or phrases that are religious in nature. And also, you can't use political candidates or celebrities. Although people were posting, I saw. Walls. Yeah. Well, somehow that slipped through.
Somehow.
So
wonder how.
I don't know, Ron. Like, how? I don't know. It's hard for me to get too worked up over it. Apparently, they fixed it. I doubt that they were intending to be Muslim biased. Maybe it didn't occur to them to go, I don't know why you would ban Jesus loves you from going on there. If somebody wants a Coke can that says Jesus loves you, why would you stop them from doing that? I don't really get it, I guess, more than being outraged. I just don't really understand where someone may have been coming from if this was some deliberate thing.
I think this is probably very similar to what's happening in a couple of the stadiums around the country. We talked about what happened at the Arizona Cardinals football game with the MAGA hat with a low-level employee telling her she couldn't wear it. There was a story a couple days ago, again, about a MAGA hat at Citi Field where a low-level employee told a woman she couldn't wear it. Now there's a big lawsuit. My guess is this did not come from the top. Like this wasn't some outline from the C-suite at Coke. It was a singular person who was in charge of this project interjected their feelings. And that's such an easy thing to do at a big company because the CEO of a company is not going to hand check every single little thing that a company does. I mean, it's super similar to what happened with Bud Light and the Dylan Mulvaney, I think.
Mulvaney.
Yeah. It was a person's decision. It wasn't but the company now has to pay a price. And who knows what that price will be. I doubt it's going to be a Bud Light level boycott. So yeah, I think it's somebody lower level, and somebody finds it, and then they point it out, and they retrain them, just like we heard about what happens at these football stadiums. So a lot of times it's just lower level employees making unilateral decisions. You hear about it on airplanes all the time, right? Stewardesses will make a decision, and Delta will catch all kind of flack for it, and then they'll say this is not our policy.
I always think it's so dumb when people hold it against a corporation what one isolated employee does. Like somebody is an asshole at a McDonald's in Schenectady and people are like, oh my God, McDonald's is the... No, it's just like some asshole who's just got like a job that they're, trying to pay for their drugs and their apartment rent that they're sharing with 3 other people. And then you got, oh my God, it's a huge corporate. No, it's like, do you know how many different people work for these corporations? And, one person does something idiotic and suddenly it's immediately completely about the entire corporation. Now, this is on their official site and they do have it up. So they're going to be scrutinized for what's on their site. I believe that it's down right now is what I'm being told. So they're probably most likely they're trying to button this up and make sure that there's nothing else that people can bitch about. And, or maybe they'll decide that it's just not worth doing at all, Ron. I don't know. But I guess like my other question is like, who's the person who doesn't have anything better to do other than like go to the Coke website and just crank a bunch of things in there to see what it allows? I mean, I guess it's good to hold them to accountability, but I don't know. I can't get that worked up about it. I'm much more offended by the sweet, toilety taste of Pepsi than anything that Coke could possibly do, Ron. I think Pepsi is the real.
We're a Pepsi family, so
enemy.
You just settle the fuck
I
down.
know. I kid. Pepsi is I'll drink Pepsi when I have no other choice. Let's take a look at one tweet before we go to break. And this is a little bit of a foreshadowing of what we're going to do when we come back a little bit ahead in the show. We're going to have a fantasy draft because Joe Kinsey will join us. And that's what happens when Joe joins the program. But take a look at this, Ron. Donkey Kong at home, the Atari 2600. If you are too young to remember it, you just cannot understand how important it was. Ron, I know that your family couldn't afford desserts. I know that you couldn't have apple pies. I know that you were going hungry lots of days. Did you have any type of home video entertainment system when you were a kid?
Yeah, we actually had that. We had that Atari. And I think I've told you this before. My all-time favorite. Well, I had 2 all-time favorites. Breakout. Is that Breakout the one where you're trying to break the lines out at the bottom?
That's a great choice.
I could play Breakout today, actually. I could play Breakout today. And
you're goddamn right, Ronnie.
And
I'd be right there with you.
I loved Activision skiing. Because you could put the Activision in the Atari.
Oh yeah.
Machine. Yeah. I loved Activision skiing. So yeah, those were my 2 favorites.
The Activision games were some of the very best games. Yeah, I will say though, the first Pac-Man was so fucking terrible. It was like such a big deal, and it cost like $40 or $50, which is like got to be over $100 in today's money. And it was absolutely fucking nothing like the arcade version of Pac-Man. It was absolutely terrible.
Hey, OutKick fans on YouTube, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button and make your way over to OutKick.com where you can watch the full episode.